RTE management to pursue such a course. I think it will be absolutely shameful if ordinary workers in RTE who are on very ordinary salaries are the ones who suffer for the past crimes of RTE management, for the obscene salaries of the likes of Ryan Tubridy, for the flip-flops, for the entertaining budget, for all of that waste that people are rightly disgusted by, but for which those who are going to suffer had no responsibility whatsoever. The other ones who will lose as a consequence of this plan is the public. We have a world which is now dominated by social media giants owned by multi-billionaires. We have a world dominated by disinformation and so on, and the need for proper public service broadcasting has never been more clear. I would have very significant criticisms of how RTE carries out its work. I think its reporting in terms of what's happening in Gaza has been pretty shameful, to be honest. I think they're regurgitating many Israeli lies and so on. But we need to have public service broadcasting. We need to put it on a different and better basis to ensure that it actually fulfills a proper public service mandate. But we have a much better chance of getting that public service broadcasting from a publicly funded, publicly provided broadcaster rather than relying on the likes of Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. So we think they're going in completely the wrong direction. We published a detailed plan of RTE for the people, a different model of public service broadcasting, outlining how they should abandon the TV licence model, which already people have voted with their feet in terms of refusing to pay. It's an unjust regressive tax which hits the poorest household in the country to the same extent as it hits the richest household in the country. We think they should abandon the commercial model of relying on advertising funding, which is behind the rot at the top of RTE, this drive for attracting advertising, and instead should properly fund public service broadcasting through, for example, a big tech tax and fund not just RTE through that, but other public service media outlets throughout the country. So we'll definitely be raising this this week and arguing very strongly that RTE workers and the public must not pay the price for the crimes of those at the top of RTE.
Yeah, so I want to deal with two topics. The first is the issue of the Defence Forces, and the other is the issue of rents. So on the Defence Forces first, it's no secret that the Defence Forces have been plagued by low pay and really excessive working hours down through the years. But I think the poll that has been published this morning about the views of officers within the Defence Forces is really remarkable and worthy of comment. I understand that the Representative Association of Commissioned Officers, RACO, who've published this survey, are in conference today. But the finding in their survey that 36% of commissioned officers favour industrial action to tackle pay and conditions in the Defence Forces. It's truly remarkable. I mean, you would have to ask the question that if that is the percentage of commissioned officers who favour industrial action, what would the attitude and the response be from the non-commissioned rank and file within the Defence Forces? We've seen the threat of a blue flu within the ranks of the Garda Síochána, and I think this poll clearly raises the question as to whether we might see the possibility of action of that kind within the Defence Forces themselves. For my part, I would say that I support the representative associations, but I believe that there should be right for Defence Force personnel to trade union rights and full trade union rights, up to including the right to take industrial action. On the question of rents, obviously we had the publication of the daft.ie report, I think midnight Sunday night, and it was big news yesterday. A lot of the headlines were about rent continuing to rise in Dublin, but at a lower rate. Just to draw attention to the fact that that report also indicated that rents are racing ahead in the areas outside the capital. In Cork City, for example, rents were up more than 10%. In Cork County, they were up nearly 12%. €1,882, I think, the average rent in Cork City. So between €20,000 and €25,000 a year. And while this is happening, the government refuse to even freeze rents, when what is needed is not just to freeze rents, but to cut rents and then to freeze them. They refuse to take this step. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael very much landlords' parties. This government very much a landlord's government, which clearly, I think, and this report only serves to underline it, is favouring the interests of those who are collecting and taking the rent at the expense of those who are having to cough it up and make sacrifices in order to be able to do so. So that's basically it.
So I mentioned this on the Week in Politics, but myself and Gino Kenny, as part of a People Before Profit delegation, are travelling to Cairo on Saturday, and we'll be going by convoy to the Rafah crossing on Sunday. This event, this convoy, has been organised by the Syndicate of Egyptian Journalists, the Journalists Union in Egypt, and it will include international political representatives, civil society representatives, and journalists themselves. And the idea of the convoy is to go to the Rafah crossing to put pressure on the Egyptian government to open the crossing, to allow the humanitarian aid that is waiting outside and has been queuing for weeks, to allow it in big numbers, required numbers, to deal with the humanitarian catastrophe that is unfolding in Gaza. We also want to just mention the two motions this week on the question of the expulsion of the Israeli ambassador and the Human Rights Court. The motion Sinn Féin are putting to push the government to go to the Human Rights Court. We want to see a free vote on these motions, because just like the question of the right to choose and abortion was a free vote, this has to be a conscience vote. There will be many TDs in both government parties, in the three government parties in fact, I do forget about the Green Party, that will want a free vote on this, that will have a conscience about trying to do as much as absolutely possible to change the situation of the humanitarian catastrophe and the absolute belligerence of Netanyahu and the Israeli government on the people of Gaza. So there are two messages. We'll be part of this convoy for a week at the Rafah crossing. We'll return then and obviously come back to the media at that point, and we will have a social media organiser with us, so we'll be reporting consistently from Cairo and from the Rafah crossing. Do you want to add anything, Gino?
No, obviously, it's the unfolding situation in Gaza is, it's cataclysmic, and, it's almost unbearable each night watching news reports on BBC, RTE, Al Jazeera, children being slaughtered while the world kind of turns a blind eye. It's really just hard to take. And the kind of inhumanity that's going on is, I think the world is disgusted, but governments that claim to be democratic are just, turning the other way. So I think it's important as parliamentarians that we're there to kind of highlight and give solidarity to the people of Gaza at this terrible, terrible time.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. The intention is of the IPSC, the anti-war movement, People Before Profit, and the wider pro-Palestinian movement here in this country is to have a massive protest outside this building on Wednesday night when the two motions that are going before the House this week that I mentioned are being voted on. So that protest is starting at 6 o'clock and will continue while the voting will be taking place. And again, just to reiterate, we do believe there should be a free vote on both of these motions, that the government shouldn't be using their whip and their authority on individual TDs not to be able to vote in a way that guides their conscience on this most crucial issue facing the world.
Do you think that there are government TDs who would like to expel the Israeli ambassador? Has anyone from the government backbenches indicated that to you?
Well, privately they have, but I wouldn't say who they are. But I do know that many of them feel much stronger than they're being represented by their party leaders, by the Taoiseach and by the Taoiseach, and want something much more intervention is done. And then there's the Sinn Féin motion on the Human Rights Court as well. And both the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach are saying, well, look, they're investigating the Israeli government for the last 9 years on questions of breach of human rights against the Palestinian people. But this is in a different ballpark. What's happening in Gaza since the 7th of October is in a completely different ballpark, requires a new complaint, and they were very, very quick to make similar complaints against Putin, and rightly so, over the invasion of Ukraine. But the reluctance to do so now is absolutely stunning and is not acceptable.